That is right. When John Christ says that he is going to be on the underground, we wait, and that is okay. Sorry about the time shift, y'all, and I appreciate y'all so much here on the underground. Y'all are starting to file in right now, which is fantastic. So I want you to tell your mother, your grandmother, your father, your brother, your sister, your cousin, stop what the fuck you're doing right now and get on this live. We are live with John Christ, formerly of Danzig, solo artist, decorated artist, and metal icon in all of our fucking books. So share this shit out anywhere and everywhere. Why? Because the big bad devil daddy himself told you to do so. There will be no commercials. So guess what? We are live right now. Feel free to type your comments in the comment section and your questions, and we will try to get them answered for you. John Christ, welcome to Reaper's Underground Show. How are you doing? Now, that's how you make a fucking entrance, people.
Well, I figure somebody want to hear it at some point.
Absolutely. You know, wow, I'm speechless. I got that, you know, like that 13-year-old kid, you know, the hairs when I used to have hair is sticking up on my arms and wherever else it's left.
Mine too. There's something about that tune that it still has, there's still magic in it. You know, a lot of us geezers, right? We remember Christmas time, Frosty the Snowman.
Yep.
Right? When he goes into the greenhouse with the girl and he melts. And then Santa opens the door and he goes, there must have been some old magic in that black hat after all. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And then Frosty comes back to life. Happy birthday, right? So that's, for some reason, that song refuses to die. And, you know, I'm happy that I was a part of it. That song, it took a village to put that thing together.
Is that right? See, that's actually, that was one of the questions I was going to have for you. You know, how did that riff come about? You know, was it, you know, one of those instances you were just kind of jamming around and suddenly you just fell upon it and it became Mother?
So it was a process. You know, just we'll do a short little dive as I get myself comfy here. I know I got.
Is that the original BC Rich, by the way?
Yeah. So for you and your fiends out there, this is the bitch. This is number one.
I knew it.
See that these screens? That's Eerie Vaughn's work right there.
Oh, no shit.
It used to say JVC on it, and I think there's just a little bit a part of it, and there's a little sticker up here, and there's scars on the back of it.
Oh yeah.
From the neck has been broken on this guitar at least 3 times.
Holy shit balls.
And the first time was when we went to LA to open up for Slayer.
Oh man.
And it was in the summer of '88. And it, funny story, like we didn't even have a back line yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rick Rubin had signed Slayer over to, I don't even know, it was probably still Def Jam. He was probably still
I think
Def
so.
Jam. And he was in LA and they were in LA, and he wanted us to do a show at the Palladium, Hollywood Palladium.
Whew.
And so we was like, okay, so what do we take? Can't take amplifiers. So Erie took a couple of basses. I took Les Paul and the Bitch, and Chuck took a kick drum pedal and some sticks, and we didn't even have proper flight cases yet.
Oh man. Talk
In
about
those
getting thrown to
days-
the wolves.
And they just threw them. I saw them throwing the guitars down the ramp. The Bitch went first, and then Erie's basses were thrown on top of it. We stayed at the Franklin Plaza Hotel, and anybody that's ever been to Hollywood, all the way up at the top of La Brea, there was a little, place called the Franklin Plaza, Franklin and La Brea. And we got into the hotel room, opened up my guitars to practice. Les Paul was fine. The Bitch, the neck was snapped in half at the 3rd fret.
Oh, damn.
And I was
That's
heartbroken.
terrible.
Yep. And it was like, okay, so I got a Les Paul to do the show, right? And we recorded the first album. And the thing is, the highest note on the lead, when you go up to the high lead, right? This is a 24 fret guitar, okay? And then that pushes up to an F sharp. So a Les Paul is 22 frets. So you can't get that note in a normal bend. So you have to go to the 22nd fret, bend the note, stick your guitar pick underneath the string.
Oh, wow.
See, it's a trick. And I was like, holy crap, how am I going to do this? So we called Slayer's guys, and Kerry King said, I'll lend you one of my BC Rich guitars. He had a Mockingbird.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
Saved my life, right? So, and I was nervous. We were opening up for Slayer at a sold out show in Hollywood. No warm-up gigs or anything. They sold the show out, and they oversold it. They had 200 kids out on Sunset Boulevard with tickets that couldn't get in.
Holy shit. That's
So-
crazy.
They started breaking the windows of the building. They started vandalizing cars. The cops came. The riot police came. The helicopters were circling overhead. When we came off stage, I'm like, what are all those helicopters? And we saw a platoon of policemen marching with the shields and batons. I'm like, man, LA is nuts. It's my first time to LA. I'm like, this is crazy. And
Very passionate metal fans.
do you remember that show, Entertainment Tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that night on Entertainment Tonight, they covered the show and said
wow.
heavy metal concert at the Palladium was disrupted by fans and riot police. They were breaking windows outside, and we had to be escorted out of there just as Slayer was going on. So we did not even see their show. But I called my folks the next day, and they were like, yep, we saw you guys on TV last night. You can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere. And funny thing, BC Rich was in the high desert, Victorville, California, right?
Mhm.
Near the 15 freeway that you take to go from LA to Vegas. And so the guitar went right to the factory, but they're family operation out there. It took me almost a year to get the guitar back. So we went on tour with Slayer and then Metallica, and I played Les Pauls the whole time. So all that lead work that I did on the Bitch, I had to figure out ways to do it on a Les Paul. The band was happy because they loved Les Pauls, and I loved the look and everything, but it didn't have the same feel and access that 24 frets and
Oh
went.
yeah, big time.
So anyway, hello everybody. Are they checking in? Can you monitor the kids in the hall?
Oh, by far I can. Yes, I can. Not a worry. When I had Erie Vaughn on last year, more or less people were just so captivated by stories. I think they didn't know what to ask.
Well,
But that's
okay. So, well, hopefully I won't repeat any of his stories.
I'm sure
if
you
I
won't.
do, I'll make them better though.
I could definitely tell he was from Jersey, man. That accent is so thick. It don't matter that he's in Nashville because it hasn't rubbed off on him at all. Cody says, amazing show already. Absolutely. And thank you for joining, brother. So let's just get down to it, man. Let's start from the beginning. How did your journey begin?
Beginning would have been first song, right?
Now, you guys were still Sam Hain at the time, right? Before the name was actually changed.
So, do you want to hear the original backstory, like how I got into it?
Yeah. How did you find yourself, because you had played with some other bands previous to that.
Now, Reaper, you mean to tell me with the internet, you haven't read my backstory 100 times already, and you want me to go through this, and our time is this short? I mean, what the hell are you doing? Come on now, seriously.
For sure.
Ask your fans. If they want me, I'll tell you.
They'll always love to hear like how you got, how anyone gets into the business.
All right, wait. I see. Is that skull looks familiar on your vest?
It has literally been there for, oh man, probably 15 years.
I hope you wash that thing once in a while.
Well, of course.
Okay. So, all right. So here we go. Backstory. Let's circle back in a time long ago. in a century long past, in the midst of the glam metal 80s, right?
Sadly.
I was living in Baltimore. I was going to college. I was living on campus and coming back home on the weekends. It wasn't far, but I was a music major. It was my backup plan because I hadn't, become a big rock star or anything at this point. So
of course
I had to get like career skills. I had to go and get a BS degree or a BA degree. So I was going to be a guitar and jazz major and then teach until I got my big break, which is what I did actually.
That's exactly what I did.
Yep. And what's cool about it is, let me speed this up. I got into college after high school. Actually, I started going to college while I was in high school, right? That was
awesome.
Back in the 80s, they had started that program. So if you had gotten all your basic high school credits done, either your junior or senior year, you could start. I think I was my senior year. And some of my buddies that I was hanging out with had done it. So I said, okay, I'll get some college credit and everything, and I'll get to go. My high school was right across the street from the college. So I could go to morning classes, hop in the car, drive across the street, and sit around there and gaze longingly at the beautiful college co-eds. Right? Can we still
And
say
they were
that?
fine back in the day. They were
Yeah,
fine.
right. 80s. Remember big hair Aquanet? Very flammable, but look good. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I was studying guitar and voice and theory over there. And my guitar teacher had gotten a degree from Towson State University. And, he played great and he taught me a lot of stuff. And I said, hey, think I can get into the guitar program over there. He said, you know what we'll do is I'll structure your lessons just to get you in. So that's what we did. I went over there. The music program was full. They were not taking any more guitar players. And they said, we have one opening on bass guitar. Do you play bass? Yeah, I play bass.
Sure.
But then they said, okay, prove it. So not only did I have to audition on guitar, I had to audition on bass. And they were like, all right, you can obviously play, you can read music, you can write music. All right. We got a spot for you. So I got in as a bass player, and there weren't many jazz bassists at the time. So it worked out. I called up one of my high school buddies that I used to jam with. I said, you still got that old ugly bass? He goes, yeah. I said, I need it. He's like, why? I said, I'm a bass major now. He's like, get the F out of here. I was like, yeah. But I did not know jazz from Adam. I had no clue, right? I knew the theory behind it and everything, but I was not a jazz player. I didn't listen to a lot of jazz music except my parents. My dad was in a jazz band. He played trumpet and sang lead vocal. Kind of, he sounded like Mel Torme. But
no shit.
Yeah, he played great.
Wow.
So he grew up in the 50s, went to Georgetown. So he was like a BMOC, big man on campus. And he was like a rock star because he played in a big band, at Georgetown. That's where he went. That's where he met my mom. 4 years later, my oldest sister was born. Bada bing, bada boom. And so cycle back to Towson. So I get in, and it was like a crash course. I was behind the other students in some levels. Like as far as the guitar and everything, I was fine, but theory, I was a couple classes behind, so I had to catch up. And then I started liking it, and theory was a lot of fun. So after the first semester, I said, I've met the big rock star over there was a guy named Hank Levy, and he directed the big bands. So the jazz bands that had 15 horns in it, 5 trumpets, saxes, trombones, guitar, bass, great drummers, all this kind of stuff. He played with Stan Kenton orchestra. But the thing about him is now I can make this circle. I transferred to be a jazz comp major, and I ended up studying with the guy who wrote the song Whiplash. Remember the movie Whiplash?
Oh yeah.
With Shia LaBeouf, that hard? Okay. So
yeah.
My teacher wrote that song for that movie. And he was a badass, right? And he would sit there, and the thing is, what the whole class for me was, you come in, you compose a melody, and then he shows you how to harmonize it for a whole band, right? And that
is not an easy task.
No, without a piano or without a guitar. I'd be sitting at the piano plunking out all thumbs, my little melody or whatever, and he'd be sitting at his desk with this big conductor's sheet of all these staffs. It had like 25, lines of standard notation. And he's just writing stuff out, and he's humming along. Every once in a while, I come over to the piano and play a chord. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm writing the trumpet arrangement. I'm like, in your head? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, that's impossible. He's like, no, you get the hang of it. And just like, I said, I want to learn how to do that. And he's like, let's baby steps, right?
Right.
But so that's where I was. So what he could do, I couldn't do. But what I would do then is I would take guitar solos like Eddie Van Halen solos. And there was a band called Loudness, this Japanese guitar player, Kira Takasaki. and he was like a Japanese Van Halen. And I would transcribe his solos. I would learn them, and then I would write them out in notation, and I would take them into my lesson, and he would try and play them. And he'd go, you learned that in your head and then wrote it out. I go, yeah. And he goes, you can do this. He goes, why you would work that hard, I don't know. He goes, it seems a little obsessive to write, all these 30-second notes and everything. And I said, yeah, but it's a great solo. He goes, okay, so what we got to get you to do is to be able to hear singable melody lines and things in your head. And then as you get better, once you have the melody, you kind of file that right in the center, like where a lead vocal would be.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're thinking about like a visualization of a stereo image. So you're hearing a piano part playing some chords behind that melody. And then the bass player's thumping underneath. And what's the groove going to be? And then are you going to have accents with the saxes going around, and then trombones are, and then the guitars are thumping up. So he taught me how to imagine these musical pictures in my brain. So I use the guitar to find them, right? Some people would use piano.
Right.
And then once you get it, you start writing out each part. And that's fine for a guitar and a piano part and a vocal part. But trumpets, you got to transpose everything a step down. Then you got E flat saxophones, you got B flat saxophones. Then you got trombones, that can be in two different keys. And then you got to do it for 15 players. And then you go at their rehearsal and you stand up like a little 8-year-old kid with your wrinkled piece of manuscript paper and you hand out all these parts and you're praying that it sounds good. And then it sounds like shit. And the trumpet players are like, that's supposed to be a B flat, not a B, and it's humiliating, and that's your initiation into the whole thing, right? So I made it through a couple.
I remember that moment myself, actually.
So to get to the Danzig thing, but I was still a rocker at heart. I was trying to catch up on this jazz thing, and I got some Facebook friends and people that remember that were in my classes, and I would do weird stuff like. We would have a theory class and a musicianship class, and for extra credit, I bring in my Marshall half stack.
There you go.
With recorded backing tracks and play Yngwie Malmsteen and Steve Vai songs in class to a recorded track, just so that basically it was to try and impress the other guitar players that I'm not a jazz player yet, but try this. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was always a little sloppy, hot mess, but I made my point. And I learned really fast, and the teacher started to like me. So by my end of my first year, when we got snowstorms, I lived on campus, and if they didn't cancel class, I'd go to class, and there would be a message on the board that said, John Knoll, please conduct the review for the exam.
Nice.
Weird, right? But it was fun. So I go home for Christmas break, and I'm putting the Christmas lights on my parents' tree in the front yard. One of my high school buddies driving by on his motorcycle and says, hey, man, I'm working at an architectural firm in downtown Baltimore, and my boss's kid plays drums in this band called Sam Hain. You ever heard of him? I said, no. He said, man, when they got albums on the wall, and they're all covered in blood, and they're up in New Jersey, but his parents are here, so he moved up there and he's living in Rutherford. And I'm like, well, that's good, And he goes, well, they're looking for a guitar player. I said, punk rock? I said, nah, man, nah.
It was different. It was a different punk rock, though.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't heard it yet. And he goes, they got a couple of albums out and they've done some tours, but they're trying to sign a big record deal. But the producer said that they had to fire their guitar player. If they got a new guitar player, then they would get a record deal. And I was like, really, who's the producer? They said, Rick Rubin. And I said, Run DMC, Rick Rubin? And they said, yeah.
Right.
That's who it was then. And I said, nah, I'm not interested. And So 6 months go by, do another, 2 semesters or whatever, and I'm raking leaves or something. Same buddy comes by, like, hey, how's it going? He goes, hey man, my boss's kids band still haven't found a guitar player yet. And I said, really? And he goes, you should think about it. I was like, all right. So he brought, the guy, London came over with a friend of his in this old beat up VW van, looked like a surf van, but then kind of with those guys in it, it was like this goth, creepy pedophile looking thing.
Oh,
and,
shit. Yeah, the old school serial killer vans.
The old school, and they come walking in head to toe, just black, and London's like pasty white, black hair, black jeans. His friend, I don't know who his friend was. He had kind of like a mohawk and all kinds of earrings and everything. And he was wearing, I think he might even been wearing white makeup with black lipstick or whatever. I don't know. And, and they were so skinny that if they turned sideways, they were like a shadow and disappeared. Right.
Right.
This is weird. So, but I invited them into my house. So they came down to my basement and I had a Marshall stack set up and I played, jammed some like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Ted Nugent, old school stuff. I was probably sitting there in a pair of ripped jeans and a disintegrating Iron Maiden t-shirt.
Right.
A bootleg that I bought in a parking lot after a concert for $7, right?
Those were the days.
But London was a cool guy. He was a nice guy. His friend was nice, and he was kind of doing air drums. And he was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, what I'll do, I'll go home. I'll get a couple of our albums, on cassette. I'll come back. I'll get them to you, and tell you what songs to learn." I was like, "Okay." So he does that. Comes back, and I listen to the stuff, and he says, "One thing you got to know." He said, "It's not like regular metal." He said, everything is down chopping. I said, well, but I said, alternating is so much quicker. He goes, no. It's not about the speed. It's about the sound. It's like a razor blade, meets a jackhammer type of tone. And I said, okay. And then back. I was just like, damn, fast. And I wasn't used to it. I said, you're kidding. I said, I'm cramping up. And he goes, yeah, it's a marathon.
Right.
Different technique. I said, well, it's going to take me a minute, and then there was like, what is that? Sam Hain, maybe something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see that chug just sounds so much better.
What's that?
I said that chug just has so much more bite than the
so
like
the chug was my thing, right?
Yeah.
So, and I love Glenn and everything. The songs are great, but the mixes were horrible. They were crap. You couldn't hear.
Oh, we know.
Okay, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Right.
The songs were there, but what I liked about it was there was kind of this dark metal edge with the punk rock cheesy drum sounds and everything. But but his dark voice kind of carried the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely it did.
So I was like, wow, it's like this Morrison does punk rock with,
Yep.
Richie Blackmore, Tony Iommi on guitar thing. I was like, I think I see what they're going for, but it sounds really bad. But now this down picking thing, Let the Day Begin, and In My Grip, and it was like, this shit is so fast to play down chopping that now I have to master it.
Right.
Even though
It's almost like a personal challenge at that point.
I had to get the gig to turn it down just for my ego. That's what I was thinking. But so London came back and he's like, yeah, that sounds good. He said, but you gotta, get that down picking thing. And I'm like, yeah. I said, I'm still cramping up. I said, it'd be so much easier just to alternate. He's like, dude, the last guy I took to Glenn to audition was like a surfer dude from Ocean City, Maryland. And he started alternate picking and he was such a jerk. We ended up dropping him off on Route 3 out of Manhattan.
Oh, shit.
And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, so I've really got to vet you out before I even talk to Glenn about bringing another one out, or they'll drop me on the side of the road. I was like, all right.
Who the fuck wants that?
Yeah. So, but now I was like, okay, now I got a challenge. So now I'm getting into it. And so they set up a date and I go up and audition. And that was the famous story where I did cramp up in the audition. I was the first one there. My buddy and mine, the same guy who brought me the information about it, we drove up together and we were following London. And, I'd never driven on the turnpike before, but I was bored. So I was kind of tailgating him and he would pull up to the toll booth and I would rear end him a little bit. What are you doing? I'm like, what? Nothing. So we go up there and London is living with a girlfriend in Rutherford, New Jersey. And then he goes in and he changes, like he was in jeans and a t-shirt. And then he comes out like in the Sam Hain rig, transformed.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, holy crap. I mean, pasty.
These guys are serious.
Yeah, pasty white, jet black hair, 18-inch engineer boots, like chains and stuff everywhere. And I'm on my same torn up blue jeans, not washed, and my ripped up Iron Maiden shirt from, and all I took was this guitar and one distortion pedal. That was it. Because I didn't know. They said, nah, we're in a studio. It's Aerosmith's studio, Top Hat, 28th Street, Manhattan, blah, blah, blah. They got all kinds of amps. So I was like, all right. And so we go in and Erie shows up like 6'3". And
he's a tall man.
he was all glammed out, man. He had makeup on. He had the devil lock going, right? He had like his handmade like wristbands that were like 12 inches wide or whatever, and he had dark kind of Doyle like makeup on and patent leather. It was just like holy crap. And so we were gonna follow him and Glenn just was like black jeans, black t-shirt, black boots, nothing fancy, just like okay, but quiet. And so we followed them to the studio and I figured, all right, well, we're here. I'm going to go first. They had like 4 or 5 other guitar players audition before me. I drove 4 hours to get there. They made me wait all flipping night.
Oh.
And
thanks.
I was climbing the walls. I was like, man, are you kidding me? It's like I was hoping that I wasn't driving 4 hours for this punk rock crap. And now here it was. I was in this punk rock crap. But I'm looking at all the gold and platinum albums on the studio walls. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. It had a good vibe and everything. And I heard, they were playing the songs that I've been learning. And some of the guitar players were really good. Other ones were like kind of, whatever.
Right.
you're gonna get
The riff and such.
and hang on for 1 second.
Absolutely.
You call you back when I'm done. So, I'm getting irritated because now 2 hours, 3 hours, I'm just sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
And finally, and I see a couple of guys walking in and out. I didn't recognize them. It was Rick Rubin, and the other guy was Scott Koenig, I think. And then George Drakoulias was Rick's close friend. So this was long before the Black Crowes ever came. George was the guy who discovered the Black Crowes, right? But these guys, Rick, they all knew each other from NYU. I think Rick and Russell Simmons were roommates, so they lived on the same floor dorm at NYU. So, but I didn't know any of these people. I didn't know. They were just like long-haired dudes walking in and out. And
yeah, Rick doesn't look like the average like record guy.
No. Especially now,
Oh yeah.
Now he's got that kind of old man in the sea thing going on.
Looks like he stepped off a Led Zeppelin album cover.
Kind of, or maybe he is just the God man himself. I don't know.
Right.
But so finally, it was probably 11 o'clock or 11:30. We've been there since 6.
That's
they came out. Yeah, they said, "Okay, John, we're ready." I was ready for a nap at this point, right?
Right.
And so I go in, and I'm pissed off. I'm irritated, and so I had one guitar cable on my shoulder. I had the pedal, and I had my guitar out ready to go. And I just walked into the studio, and I didn't look at anybody. I just went, "What amp you want me in?" Okay, I plugged into a Marshall, put my cable down, and I was just throwing shit down. I'm like, this is a fucking waste of time. And then I plug in, and the Marshall's like humming, and it's beat. It's not a great amp. This thing it's like a rental car that had been abused in a smash up derby race on a dirt track. Okay, that's what it was. But it made sound, so I was trying to get some sort of tone out of it. And then I go to tune up with Erie, and he's all out of tune. I mean, it's and I don't even know if he noticed it, I mean, but he just looks so freaking amazing. So, we'd start to play a couple of chords, and he's just like, I mean, it didn't sound like a bass. It sounded like a wild boar. He's kind of growling. So I would play an A, he'd play an A, and then I would just kind of walk over and grab the machine head, and then deep. So in like 10 seconds, I tuned up his bass. He didn't even know it, I don't think. And then we started playing, and I forget, it was 8 or 10 songs, something like that. And as soon as I start playing, we're doing like Sam Haingling's, like, "That's not how you play it." And I said, "What do you mean that's not how you play it?" "Well, you're supposed to play like this. Here, let me see your guitar." I didn't realize that this was going to be my future, of him going, "Okay, it's supposed to be like this. It sounds like that." And then his fingernails are so long that he could barely push the strings down because the fingernails were keeping the flesh of his fingers above the fretboard, so he kind of never seen that before, but he was like, I said, "Okay, I hear that." I said, "I was kind of doing it down here,
It's got so much more meat.
And he goes, no, that's an overdub." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm just combining the overdub and the other track." And I said, "What about this part?" He goes, "Oh no, that's another track. Don't worry about that." So I was kind of combining 2 or 3 parts. And what I didn't know at the time is eventually that was going to be my style. So we would write a main part together, and then we would add a couple of overdubs in the studio. But as I was recording it, I'm working out ways to play the overdubs with the main rhythm part, and then little band-aids or whatever if I need to jump here or there for a second, so that live the bottom doesn't fall out of it.
Right.
Because I have one guitar player. Because we, later on he talked about, well, maybe we should have another guitar player for tour and blah 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 blah. And we tried, and it was just like, didn't need it, So back to the audition, we go and we're playing. So there are two or three little songs like that. And I said, here's the thing. I said, the guitar mix on these albums is so bad, you cannot hear what the actual part is. It's all mashed together. I don't think Glenn liked that very much. He wasn't impressed. Ruben was laughing.
He's like, this guy knows his shit.
Erie was doing one of these. Where did I drop my guitar pick? So Glenn and I did not hit it off right away, but I said, okay, I'll play it that way. And then as soon as I played, it was like, yeah, that's fine. That. And we did that. And then, and then we started doing some of the faster stuff, and I did start cramping up, and they're like, you're slowing down. And I'm like, well, you're playing it faster than the record. And they're like, well, that's too bad. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Then I'm going to alternate pick. So we're going back and forth, and Ruben is just like expressionless.
Right.
Just watching what's going on. And then it was the weirdest audition, because at the end of it, London said, here's what we do. We play some songs together, and then the band sits down. I start playing like drum beats and riffs, and then you just start making up songs and soloing to it. And I said, wait, so I'm going to solo to a drum part. I said, can't somebody else play like a guitar or piano or something? No, just to the beat. I'm like, all right. So I crushed that part.
Right.
And then they said, okay, let's do a couple more songs. They get up and they start playing, and then they want to do like In My Grip or Let the Day Begin. It's stupid fast. It's all this stuff. So, but now Glenn and I are starting to have fun, and because I'm singing backing vocals, like Keith Richards and Jagger. That's a funny comparison, right? Christ,
right?
Big Jagger, Rich. Nah, maybe not. So anyway, but. Right. We're doing this fast stuff, and then I'm feeling my cramp going. I'm like, well, I'm not going to slow down this time. I'm going to play faster. I'm going to push them. So I strike the E string so hard that I rip off the top of my index fingernail.
Damn.
Now I'm bleeding all over my guitar.
Now that's metal.
And it's not, yeah. And I'm, when I'm stopping, I'm like sucking the blood off my finger. My guitar pick is spinning in my hand because it's all bloody. It's having trouble to hold on to it. But we're in the middle of a song, and I'm doing the like glam metal rock out with my cock out thing, on the drum riser, hitting cymbals with my headstock and head banging and doing all this metal shit. And they're looking at me like I'm freaking crazy. And then I bumped in, and this was the best thing. By this time, it had been like 5 minutes. So all my strings are coated in blood.
Nice.
And I remember distinctly bumping into Glenn's shoulder and leaving 6 lines of blood from the guitar strings on his arm. And we kept going, and we finished the song, and they're like, all right, thanks a lot, blah blah blah. And then they were like, okay, get your shit. And I was like, okay, thanks, I think. And Erie shook my hand and said, man, that was great. That was fun. So Erie's like the human one, he was cool and everything.
Right. He's got emotion.
I said, man, you look amazing. That was wild. So I went out and I was packing up my guitar and putting everything, getting ready to go. And somebody taps me on the shoulder, and it's Rick Rubin. And he goes, you like AC/DC? I said, Angus Young? I said, yeah. He's like one of my favorite guitar players ever. He said, what about Zeppelin? Jimmy Page? I said, Jimmy Page, he knows he knows every blues guitar lick ever created. And he goes, that's right. And I said, yeah, man. He said, who do you like? I said, well, I mean, I love Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath. I said, as far as blues, Frank Marino, Mahogany Rush is like, a big guy. I said, but for this rock stuff, Van Halen's great and all, and Deep Purple. But I said, Ted Nugent is just like insane. I said, this was before he was political. You know, he's just like the
Well,
crazy.
yeah,
He was just
before he had a
the
voice.
he was the motor. Yeah, he was the Motor City Madman, right?
Hmm.
And at
He
that
was way
time,
cool.
he had just like it was late '80s, so early '80s he was still headlining. Like people like the Scorpions would open up for Nugent, ZZ
Hmm.
Top, Scorpions would open up for Nugent, and he would blow the power out, you know, at these arenas because he was just a nut dog. Anyway, so I was attracted to his speed and intensity and all that. But
Oh yeah.
I love the blues, love Jimi Hendrix and all that. But Tony Iommi was one of my favorites. So that's where Ruben and I bonded. And he goes, you know what? He goes, what are you doing right now? And I said, well, I said, I'm driving back to Baltimore. I got class tomorrow.
Right.
What do you mean you got class? I said, well, I'm a college student. Spring semester starts. I got to be there for the first day of class. And he's like, well, can you hang out? I want to talk to you. I said, I don't think the singer liked me very much. And he goes, well, that's what I want to talk to you about. I said, all right. He said, so follow me down, you know, he goes, I'm heading to the studio right now. Follow me. We'll get some pizza and we'll go chill at the studio. I'm like, okay. So this is where it gets good. And then I'll wrap up the story. So we follow him down to the village. He pulls off at this little pizza stand on the left-hand side. Some of the best pizza I ever had in my life.
I believe it.
You know, and then we get back in the car, and my buddy and I are, you know, like just throwing this pizza down while we're driving looking for a parking spot. So we go down, and Rick's standing on the curb with George waiting for us. We come up, and it's just, you know, it's just a row of buildings, and then there's a dark doorway out of nowhere. No numbers on it, no light, just a dark doorway. And he rings the doorbell.
It was a portal.
It was a portal. It was a portal. So this, remember, you know, like I'm studying jazz, but I'm a heavy metal kid, you know, all that, love that crazy arena rock stuff. And the door opens and there's a light behind it. And out steps this 6-foot blonde woman that was literally Venus incarnate.
Wow.
Like she stepped out of a Playboy magazine. And she goes, hi, Rick, come on in. And so we follow him in. We get like 7, 8 steps in, and my buddy Tim is with me. And I noticed that the carpeting is purple velvet. I'm going, I've never seen purple velvet carpet before. We go down a few more steps and I start to see gold and platinum albums on the wall.
Oh, shit.
And tie-dye wallpaper. And I go, wait a minute. I said, this looks like psychedelic, like a psychedelic studio. And then we go downstairs into the lobby and the gal's sitting there, there are 2 desks, and I'm seeing gold and platinum albums. I'm like, what is this place? And Rick goes, this is Electric Ladyland Studios. I said, this is Jimi Hendrix's studio. And he goes, yeah. He goes, that control room in there, Hendrix had a Neve console flown in piece by piece from London and assembled. And then they built that studio room around the mixing desk, right? Which is how they did it in the day. You know, you brought the equipment in, you placed it where you wanted it, then you built the stands for it, and you pre-wired it. And then the last thing to go in was the floor.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, man, that's amazing. So he said, all right, come in here. And in the lounge, so we go into the lounge and we're watching videos of Slayer. And he goes, I'm thinking about signing these guys, but Dave Lombardo, the drummer, is going to quit. And he said, you know any drummers? And I said, yeah, I know a guy named Shannon out of Baltimore that plays with a group called Wrathchild America. And he's like, really? And I said, yeah, you know, I can get a number for you or whatever. And we're watching Lombardo. I'm going, that double kick is amazing. I've never seen anything like that. You know, I mean, I'd heard Boston, I'd heard Van Halen and this kind of stuff, but I'd never heard anything.
Nothing quite like Dave.
Nothing like that. He was an alien. He was dropped off from a mothership, you know. So Rick and I, we get back to Rick and we're talking. I go, yeah, I don't think, you know, Glenn, I don't think I made Glenn very happy. You know, I think I didn't mean to insult his mix. I didn't know he was the one that actually mixed it. I just thought that the recording sounded a little low budget. And Rick goes, well, absolutely. That's why I want to sign them to CBS. I'll produce them, put them in real studios and get amazing sound. They had a great energy, great music, but their guitar player he couldn't play.
Right.
He looked good, but he just didn't have the chops. And his stage presence was weak, whatever he was going to say. I remember the guy's name was Damien. I don't remember his last name. And so I said, well, I think I blew it with Glenn. I think I pissed him off and he doesn't like me and I didn't make him happy. And he looked me straight in the eye and he said, John, what makes me happy will make him happy. He goes, I want you to come back in a couple of weeks and do it again. And I said, well, I know what he wants now that I know how the songs are supposed to go.
Right.
Like, all right. He goes, well, I'll get you his number and you call him up and we'll set up another audition, blah, 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 same studio, all that. So for the next 2 weeks, I go home and practice his stuff. He sends me a couple more cassettes, some Misfit stuff to learn. And then I call him and he has this. Let's see. It was like the Exorcist piano music or something.
Yeah.
Right. And on an old tape answering machine. They were cassettes back then.
Right.
86, 87. They were cassette tapes. And his was swishing, because he rewound it and recorded over it so many times. And it was like the whole thing, it was like a minute long. It was like the longest tape you ever, and it was like this creepy thing. So I started leaving a message. Hey, Glenn, it's John and all from Baltimore, blah, blah, blah. I want to come up and audition. Blah, blah, blah. And he never called me back. And this went on for days and days. And finally, I started getting pissed off because I was like, well, semester's going to start. I got to make a decision. What am I going to do? So I just start calling him up early in the morning and hanging. This is when we had wall phones, wired phones. Well, so I had one of those Princess phones that had like a 20-foot cord on it. And I call him up. I hear the answer machine. I put it over the top of my Marshall stack, turn the thing up. And it was just like, London Dungeon, all that stuff,
That's exactly why I call you the king of the pinch harmonic. So smooth.
Right. So I was cranking. So I kept playing into his answering machine until the tape ran out. And I did this for I don't know, a couple weeks straight. Finally, he calls me up. He's going, John, man, you got to stop doing that. He goes, you're calling up and using all the tape up. I'm not getting any messages. All I hear is this distorted guitar going. And I said, I'm just letting you know that I got all the songs down and I need to, come and try out and see if we're going to get this or whatever. And, he's like, man, you got to stop doing that. I said, well, you know what? You didn't call me back. What am I going to do?
Exactly.
So I go back for the second audition. The other guitar player, I was there early. The other guitar player shows up. As soon as I saw him, I knew I had the gig. Yep. I could just tell by the way he walked. And what's funny is I went in and I started jamming. Well, he went first. And this room was bigger, better amps, sound, everything. And he played some songs and everything, and I could hear him struggling. And I had it dialed, man. I was playing 8 hours, 10 hours a day, for a month almost. I was flipping ready. And so I go in and we start cranking and all this kind of stuff. And we're like 3 or 4 songs in, and Glenn stops him and says, all right. And he sends everybody out. Rick just nods his head. And, you know, Glenn comes over and he goes, you practice the stuff, you got it good. I said, yeah, you know, I know what you want now. And he's like, well, do you want the gig? It's yours. And I said, I want the gig. We shook hands and he said, all right, wait here. He went out and he said, you know, they'll come back in 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, he comes in. The other guy that tried out comes back in and says, can I watch? And we started working on Twisted Cane that night. So we started working on the first record right there and then. So Mother at the time, now Twisted Cane was, the notes were the same. But it was faster, and it was like almost like Snakes of Christ, but
Right.
there were no bends anywhere. And most of the song was just kind of like this. Hey. Hey. So there were more chords and stuff in it. And it wasn't until we started jamming later on with Rick, it was like, we got to mix the blues and we got an evil blues. We want you to be like Tony Iommi, but really Howlin' Wolf, you know, and that's when
Yeah.
You know, the squeals were mine. I didn't do as many back then. But so that's kind of how that came out. And then the bridge. And Ruben was big on the bends. So I said, okay, you like bends? We'll start putting them in everywhere.
Gives it so much more character. And
yeah,
it's really awesome to see that, you know, Rick had an ear for it.
He had a
that it would add so much more.
Because what happened was with the old guitar player, Glenn, you know, he was writing the riffs that he wanted, but he didn't bend strings. You know,
right.
he liked to have droney parts, you know. He would kind of.
Oh, yeah. It's missing so much.
Yeah, that was kind of like his thing, right?
Yeah.
And Rick was like, so I would do that, and Rick was like, you know, let's create a little bit more tension, and I was like, okay. And then that was the big thing with Mother, because Mother, originally when I first heard it, it was in Erie's basement. He had a drum set down there, and we would jam just because London, Erie, Glenn, and I, and we go down to jam. And Mother was like, Mother,
crazy fast.
And the chorus. And that was it. You know, and we got into the studio working with Rick. It's like, oh, okay, it's too fast. And then my job became, because remember my ear training at college was, okay, you got to use your ear. You got to hear what they want, interpret it, and then become a human guitar riff loop machine.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be. And it's like, it's still too much. It's got to open up more, blah, blah, blah. And then we said, okay, well, let's just, quiet it down.
Oh man, yeah, the airiness.
Right?
It's more expressive.
And everything on the upbeat, instead of having it da 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 da, we went 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. Right? So when you put it on the end of a beat, it swings.
Oh, big time.
Rick wanted it to swing. So eventually, I'll never forget, we were rehearsing in a little place, Zound Studio in Saddlebrook, New Jersey. Rick Rubin was there. George Rakulius was there. By that time, Chuck Biscuits was in the band. And, we were jamming. And then I can remember the little movies in my mind when we were all on the stage and it was hot. And the room was narrow but long. And we were working on it. We work on that, the next part. And that it was just a stop in between. Rick loved stop.
Yeah. It's got more attitude.
It didn't have the other part yet. We didn't add this. This whole thing. That's an overdub. That's not even in the original part. So when we went into the studio, I was trying to figure out how I was going to do it live. So I combined the overdub and the original, and that's when it turned into. And the whole trick that all the guitar players always try to learn that they get wrong is when it comes down to the G. You're playing an A, but your thumb has to grab the F sharp. So you got this. It's actually an F sharp minor 7, but that's just an inversion of the action. But anyway, so while you're holding the F sharp now, then the other fingers go back and grab the B. So I hang on to the F sharp until I sound the B, until I pick it. And then it smooths out like this. So now I made an overdub more important than the original thing, accidental.
It's so much fuller and more body to it, compared to what it was, in its humble beginnings, if you will. Now, when you were writing that, did you ever think that it was gonna become as big of a hit as it did?
No, give me 1 second.
Sure.
I'm late for a lesson, so.
Oh, gotcha.
And my assistant is saying, "You're supposed to be in a lesson now. The guy's calling. What are we? Call me."
Well, you're in demand for a reason.
Right. Well, it's all your fault.
I wish.
So I love telling the stories of stuff on the first couple of records. Oh, wait a minute. One more second. This is funny, right? You're interviewing me. I'm texting somebody at the same time. 20 years ago, we couldn't do any of this, right?
Nope, not a damn thing. Let's see here.
Yeah, I get a couple of questions. So how are your fans? Are they digging it?
Oh, they are digging it. Let me tell you, most of them speechless. What's up, Kitten? Rose Ramirez, good to see you, my friend. Mouse Bong says, have your playing techniques changed at all since undergoing therapy after your accident? And much
So
love to you, John.
they've changed so much, and they've changed in multiple ways at multiple points. So the hardcore fans know that in like 2004, my mind still says 2003, but people are telling me no, it's 2004. I'm like, okay, whatever. But
Right.
I was in a big truck crash. I was actually driving a truck. I had a Class A license, and you know, after my solo thing, I put the record out, put a band together, and it disintegrated like a jet plane crashing into a field. We almost got there, and by the time I got the band together and got gigs and started going, then the band started falling apart around me, and people were joining other groups, and I'm like, what is going on?
Right. That's pretty crazy.
It was crazy. And Ricky Rackman used to be Headbangers Ball. He gave me a break. He said, I want you to do a gig. I'll pay for promotion. He put out money. A bunch of people showed up. A handful of my ex-girlfriends were in a line in front of the stage. That's another story I'll save for later. But I couldn't find the bass player the week before the show, or even 2 weeks. He went MIA.
Oof.
And nobody knew where he was. And I ended up tracked down his girlfriend. And first I called his boss. I found out where he worked. I called his boss. I said, no, he's not here. He broke his arm. And, we're not sure when he's coming back. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know he got hurt.
Crap.
But I couldn't find him. He wasn't answering his phone. I called his girlfriend, and she said, no, he didn't break his arm. He told his boss that. He met some guys in a band that had a studio at their house. He's living at the studio and joined their band. He's too afraid to tell you.
Oh, where's the loyalty?
I'm just saying, right? So and then my drummer, who's a great drummer, he had a trip planned. He's from Sweden. So we had the gig booked, but he took a month off and went to Sweden. So we didn't rehearse.
Oh, man.
And he came back right before the show, and I'm like, you know what? I don't have a bass player. I don't want to throw somebody in, because my songs are not Danzig songs. They're difficult to play, and really difficult to play and sing. So I needed bass players and guitar players. I had a second lead guitar player that also sings, and a bass player that also sings, because we were doing 3-part harmonies on almost every song.
Yeah.
So not only do you have to shred, but you have to be able to sing. And I finally got the group together, and then it fell apart around me. I showed up at Ricky's club by myself, apologized to him and the fans, played a little cheesy Danzig solo medley, and then tucked my guitar between my legs and never went back to Hollywood. That was the last time I was in Hollywood. And, it was a few years later, I did some movie soundtrack work. I did some TV work. I did some live television where I got to be in a backup band, house band. I played Too Hard to Handle, backup Tom Jones.
Holy crap.
So I've played with Tom Jones. And then the next show we did, Lou Rawls. I backed up Lou Rawls. You'll never know.
Oh, yeah.
So I just stumbled into these gigs where I work with these iconic guys, and it was great. And I was playing this stupid guitar, they're like, what? I'll never forget, I was playing Too Hot to Handle with Tom Jones, and I decided I was going to do the Black Crowes version. And I went into the solo early and screwed up the whole song, and Tom just stopped and looked at me, and everybody was in shock.
It happens.
And the band director said, John, you went early. And I said, Tom, my bad. Sorry. I'll get it right for tomorrow. And it was funny. So then the truck accident happened. Basically, I was driving a truck on 60 freeway east of LA. The left front tire exploded, and the truck, as the air went out, the truck dropped down onto the wheel, the steel wheel, and it dug into the cement, cartwheeled the truck into the center divider. The truck flipped over. The windows came out. It ejected me onto the other side of the freeway into oncoming traffic, and I got run over.
Mm.
So I was
We
alive.
cannot be happier that you're still with us.
Yeah, I was alive. They got a helicopter. They flew me to, the trauma center.
Mm-hmm.
And, punctured lungs, a bunch of fractures, 15 fractures all over the place, ribs, legs, shoulders, scapulas, hands, elbows, collarbones, all kinds of stuff. For me, the most uncomfortable thing was the pneumothorax, the punctured lung, because I couldn't breathe. But apparently I was rolling around in the fast lane of the other side of the freeway trying to move, but I couldn't because my back was broken. And
holy shit.
There were people that just were trying to stabilize me. And so that was the big concern at the hospital. I woke up a few days later and my parents were looking at me because I had a trip planned. It was the Friday before Mother's Day. So I was going to fly in the next day and spend Mother's Day with them and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. When I saw them, I just assumed, hey, am I in Baltimore? They're like, no, you're still in California. And I said, did something happen? And they said, yeah, something happened. So they didn't tell me about my hand for a week.
Oh, no.
With the lungs and the back, I had to stay flat. I couldn't sit up or anything. So everything I saw was like this tunnel vision. If you put your hands on each side of your face and you look forward at the ceiling, that's all I saw for weeks. And then when they broke the news about my hand, I was like, which hand? And they said, it's your fretting hand. And I said, how bad is it? And they said, the fingers were hanging on by the skin when we brought you in. So we have to fix it. We got to, they're going to go in. They're going to pull out whatever pieces of bone they can't use. They're going to put screws in and screw it back together. And, but you'll never play again the way you did. So that was my, welcome back.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
But everybody was so happy that, because they were all concerned about the spinal fracture.
Yeah.
The hand was literally just an appendage that we'll deal with that later on.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't affect, he can live without a hand or whatever, the idea is like, see how his back goes, because I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand, I couldn't do anything. So, is he going to walk again? We don't know. So we got through all that. And, but of all the surgeries, that hand surgery was by far the most painful thing.
Oh, I totally believe it.
Yeah. And, eventually a month later or so, I got out of the hospital and I went home and, I was in therapy for 6 months and then hand therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, because I was mixing up my words and I always mix hotel and hospital. I call a hospital a hotel, a hotel a hospital. I still do it to this day.
I believe it.
And because I had a major concussion, ever since then, when I go to renew my license, I have to go through this interview process and questionnaires and all this. And because
they suck to begin with.
Yeah, in California. And so I didn't even touch a guitar for a year. And I remember trying once, picking up an acoustic guitar, and I couldn't close my fingers around the neck. I could only get it like that. The only way I had to pull my whole arm, and these the ring finger and the pinky, they're from the last knuckle down, they're numb. There's no feeling. There's nothing. And I couldn't get them to move. I would try and move my pinky, and my index finger would flex. And I would try and move my ring finger and my middle finger and my thumb. So the wires got crossed.
Yeah.
So speech therapy went quickly. That was good. But then the physical therapy of how am I going to get the messages through whatever it is, and in that the head injury did, so it takes, they told me, it said it takes time for those circuits. They can rewire themselves and go around, but don't expect to play Am I Demon and Godless the way you did. If you play at all. Somebody
Fantastic songs.
Somebody said, maybe you should play harmonica.
I would have been like, bitch.
At that point, my family and friends were just so happy that I survived, because it was a close call.
Tough as nails.
And I was on so much morphine and everything that's
horrible in itself.
Morphine makes you euphoric.
Yup.
So I ended up proposing to my girlfriend, and we got married a few months later. Let me just say to the folks out there, do not propose under the influence of morphine. I would not recommend it.
You heard it straight from the man himself.
That's right. It may not end well. And so the therapy went on for months and months and months, over a year. Then, after a year, then the psychological stuff starts to happen. So then you got to go on medications, and on the wrong medications for years. So really, and then hand specific therapy and orthopedic surgeries to help me close the goal was just to be able to make a fist.
Yeah.
If you make a fist, then the orthopedic surgeon said he did his job. So he got me to that point, a couple of surgeries later. And it wasn't until 2008 that I really started jamming again. So it was, and that wasn't at a high level. So it was about 5.5, 6 years before I was back to playing at a pro level. Not my peak, but just where I could pull off all the old songs and the leads and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is, I couldn't feel anything. I could feel pressure, but I couldn't feel texture. I couldn't feel which string was thicker or thinner. And bending, when I finally got the strength, I was bending everything so sharp. So I had to teach myself to play by sound. So I couldn't feel how much pressure I was putting on. So I had to listen to the notes, like early bends. It was like screaming cats, and the fingers would lock and cramp. You know how you get a leg cramp at night, and if you stand up, it just is agony and you're screaming. So I had that in my hand, and they had these medieval torture devices for stretching your fingers out with these cable bands. So I had to wear this stuff when I'm trying to play, and I would sit there and cry because I was like, it's never going to happen. And slowly, I began to figure out that, okay, I've got to think bluesy. I've got to slow bend, just let my ear direct my fingers on where to go. So instead of playing all these fancy patterns and licks like I used to do, that was gone. So I had to hear everything that I wanted to play in my mind, in my head. Like my jazz teacher said, now that was the only way to make it work. And then I had to send the message from my brain to my fingers like a second and a half early so that it would actually start to move. There was such a delay from the brain going down the arm to the hand. So I had to adjust all my timing, and everything was so stiff. So it took you know, a lot of time of coming home after work. I was working and just playing chords and slow things
Mhm.
when nobody was listening, just to get things moving. And little by little by little by little by little, you know, it would come back, you know,
Mm. Mm, mm, mm.
right?
Amazing that you were able to get back to that.
And so forth, right? So
My goodness.
there, but it took forever.
Oh yeah. I
So
mean,
I had to go from a totally backwards angle to make it work. And what happened was it slowed the music down
mhm.
to where now, if I were to teach somebody Twist a Cane, I would go. Still
Mhm.
cool, still heavy, right?
Oh
Still
yeah.
have feeling. So, and it was just years of grinding quietly. I was afraid to
Like
go out and jam. I
learning
didn't.
all over again.
Yeah.
And
So
we're definitely glad that you've gotten back to that because no one plays it like you do, man. Nobody. And there's a reason for that. You created these things. I have yet to
what's your
hear.
favorite Danzig song?
Oh, hell's bells, man. Uh,
First couple records.
oh,
You a
man.
Devil's Plaything guy?
I mean, that's definitely very, very high on my list. But the eeriness and the spookiness of How the Gods Kill always will remain one of my personal favorites. You know, and I was actually thinking about that because I've seen some, you know, some photos online, obviously, you know, when we're writing alongside Glenn for the album,
Yep.
that I was just like, how did he do that? Like, how did he, you know, it's like you could raise demons from, you know, below with that riff. You know, it's like, how did you do that? How did you come up with that? Was it something that you kind of heard in your head, like
You know
just
what
kind
it
of like
was? It
noodling?
was, I think, you know, Glenn would hear pieces and then I would complete the fragments.
Yeah.
You know, he would like,
So like real simple stuff.
you know, And that reminded, we had this old song, When Death Had No Name.
Oh man. To this day, I still wonder why it only showed up on
What's that?
the Lost tracks. I said to this day, I still wonder why that song didn't come to light until
We
the
tried
Lost
to get it on the first record. We tried to get it on the second. It just never happened. I love that song. My favorite part was
It's
the
so
ending.
good.
And then
So much emotion in that riff. Oh man.
and then you had
Journey. Woo. Always.
Right?
I love that track.
Yeah, so that was the thing. During the second record, Glenn would call me up. Hey, I got an idea for a song. And I was like, all right, you got a guitar? He's like, no, I'm going to sing it to you. Okay. And he was like, blood and tears. Blood and tears.
So Elvis.
And I was like, okay. And I was like, what key's good? I said, it sounds a little like Mother. He said, yeah, let's try B, So blood and tears. Blood and tears. And crying blood and tears. You know what I mean? It was just like, and that might be all we have. And we would go to rehearsal, set up a couple of cassette boom boxes, and just jam.
I
wish
bands would do that today, but they don't. Know?
Yeah. Well, it was all live then, and I would never forget Glenn. I think he called me on the phone, or I went to his house, and he'd order some pizza, and he's like, I got a couple ideas for songs. I was like, cool. He said, yeah, but this one, he said, everybody's going to say it's a Black Sabbath ripoff. And he said, it sounds like it, but it's not. And I was like, all right, you can't go wrong with that. We love Uncle Tony anyway. And, there's a song called Zero the Hero. He said, but I want to do it different. And that's, what it ended up being.
Man, I used to say that same thing when I first heard it.
This was my favorite part, the harmonics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
I was trying to get the chug, 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 because I was like, I came from. Can't believe that you need my love so bad. I can make you mad. Judas Priest was just like,
Oh yeah.
I wanted that chugging. I wanted the chug the galloping thing, but Glenn and Chuck, they weren't into the Iron Maiden type of. So,
which is crazy to me, but
I had to mix it together, and that's so there was always because we came from different backgrounds, there were differences, but that tension in Ruben in the beginning, just trying to pull it all together and create a band sound, and by stripping it all down, recording it dry, and I mean there was delay and echo and effects on the record, but just compared to what was going on in the industry at the time, we were bone dry and raw, and that rawness, and you see how hard I'm hitting it.
Oh yeah.
Just nobody was doing that.
Nope.
So it has a certain sound. When I go to teach people that, they're like, "You're really hitting it that hard?" I'm like, if the guitar is not at its limit, it's not going to sound like it.
Right.
And I didn't realize that I was working on a style or anything. I was just trying to get the right sound for the mood of the song. Mm-hmm. So that my goal was to musically express what Glenn was singing about.
Right. And which was always intense.
And just tie that mood together, and Chuck, just the first time we saw Chuck come in, he was in California and we were looking for drummers, and Rick Rubin called Filthy Phil because Glenn liked him and he wasn't available or whatever. And, and Rick called Chuck Biscuits and said, "What do it take to get you to New York to jam with Glenn Danzig?" And he said, "A plane ticket and a carton of cigarettes."
That sounds like Chuck.
And Erie and I went into the city to meet him and jam with him. And when we went, I don't remember, it was just a rehearsal studio somewhere in Midtown Manhattan. And we got in there and we started playing. And he was hitting the drums and they were just started falling apart around him. They were falling over. The cymbal stands were falling over.
Nobody hits as hard as Chuck does. God.
Yeah, except his older brother Dimwit. God rest his soul. And that's where he learned it from. Mm-hmm. Dimwit played in Fear. He played in the Four Horsemen, a couple other groups. But anyway, so when Erie and I were playing with Chuck, and Chuck and I, he liked Zeppelin, he liked the Who. I was like, okay, I can work with that. And when he started playing some of the Misfits stuff and a little bit of Sam Hain, remember we hadn't started doing the Danzig songs yet, but Erie and I, we saw what was going on, and it was just when you watch Chuck play in a small room, after about 10 minutes, you start to see the sweat being thrown off his face and his hair. And then every time he hits the snare drum, he's hitting his thigh and hitting the rim. So it's a rim shot. And he used these DC-10 sticks with no tips on them. And he hit so hard that I'm seeing after he played, you look, there's around the kit is sweat and sawdust.
Yep.
Good name for a
Those
song.
are like marching sticks.
Yeah. Yep. So, you know, and that was it when Erie and I and Chuck played and we heard what happened when those three sounds combined. We're like, this is the guy. This is
Yup.
it. You know, and
He was tight.
yeah. Yeah. So and he would tease me later on. He's like, why do you always end your solos on a high note? I'm like, what? He's like, you know, mother. He's like, that's boring once in a while, but not every time. And I said, well, why do you always start your drum fills with a snare roll?
Right.
You know,
Or
just,
the triplets, the
Yeah.
rolling triplets that he's always doing. It's like
Well,
every record.
every record. So, you know, we were just like little kids, you know, trying to get our own way. And that's how it started. And Rick kind of reined it together. And then we followed him out to LA. And you know, the first recording we did with Rick was actually for the movie Less Than Zero. You know, we worked with him on that because we hadn't done our record yet, and he was the music supervisor, and he was in LA. He couldn't do our record until he was done with the movie. We said, we'll help. So we did. You know, Roy Orbison came in, and he and Glenn worked on something together, and then Glenn sang a song, and we were like the Power and Fury Orchestra, and we did some backup stuff, and just to help him get the damn thing finished.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know that it was like Robert Downey Jr.'s first big movie, and these other, you know, McCarthy and all that. And when we saw the movie, we were expecting our songs to be in some big spot. The stuff we did, there was a scene they're driving down the road listening to the radio, and our song was like way in the back on the radio. Like, that was it. We're looking at each other going, that's it. That's it. That was it. But we got it done, and we got in there, and you know, the rest is history, as they say. But listen, I owe my student a free lesson now.
I really appreciate you. Believe me, I do. You know, just happy as hell that we were able to get you on and you know, just get a really good look at your sound, you know.
Here's a cool thing. I just started with Cameo. I didn't, you know, my sister-in-law years ago said, hey, you should get on there, you know, because I play happy birthday for people all the time and all that. And she's like, you know, stars do greetings and family members buy celebrity. And I'm like, okay. And I applied a few times. They wouldn't accept me. Right.
What?
So this year I said, well, let me try one more time. And, you know, and they accepted me. So we did a promotional thing before Christmas, and all of a sudden, boom, it blew up. So Christmas Eve, I did 17 videos in one day.
Wow.
So I'm telling stories, answering questions, playing all these riffs, and I'm right here and, you know, trying to get it done. But it's cool because you can request like that I roast somebody, you know, insult you, or if you want a birthday wish, or you want me to promote your business, or you just want to have me tell stories about Danzig or Glenn or Rick, or play some of your favorite riffs. I just started, so I'm only charging like $20. You know, if you want something within 24 hours, like if it's your anniversary tomorrow and you got nothing for your wife and she happens to be a heavy metal fan, you can get a 24-hour option. It's not too expensive. I'm not just like pushing the thing, but it's this.
For sure.
I'm sitting here in this chair. I'm in this nice little space. I'm playing this guitar, and you know, we have fun. I tease people. Sometimes they'll put in like their private inside jokes, and then at the end of it, I'll let it rip, like, you know, call somebody a nickname or whatever, and it's fun. It's fun for me, and people like it. I get this app on my phone. It says you got 2 new requests. You have 3 hours, 18 minutes, and 21 seconds to complete this. You know, it's kind of it's a weird modern thing, but I'm like, well, for me, it's not a lot of money. What a lot of the big celebrities do is they donate all the money to charity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. So Glenn's got all my money, so I am the charity. So right now, I need to make a little bit so I can get back out on the road. And
we want you back out on the fucking road.
Play for everybody. I want to meet all the fans. I want to hear all the stories. I want to do this thing called Stress-Free Guitar, where I'll come into a music store or a club or something, and guitar players that have had guitars in their closets for 20 years or 10 years, and they want to get back. They just have no clue how to get started, or they have questions about, what is 1-4-5? What's a blues progression? How did they play the lick and Smoke on the Water, whatever. I got all the answers. I'll play for you. I'll make you laugh. But sometimes I start out my classes with a 5-minute solo.
Fuck yeah.
Who wouldn't want
Ain't
that?
nothing wrong with that.
So, that's what, and for me now it's fun again. Back in the day, we were empire building.
Right.
Image, everything was intense. It wasn't happy. It was just pound it. Got to get to the next level, next tour, next album, next video, next interview, blah, 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 blah. It was just going. And we had infrastructure. We had Rick Rubin. We had American Recordings. We had Geffen Recordings. We had Warner Brother. We had publicity. We had staff. We had agencies. We had the whole thing. Now I'm one guy. I didn't think anybody was going to even remember me after I left the band. I didn't think anybody was going to give a crap about Mother, So when people said, no, they're still playing your song on Sirius XM. I'm like, no, they're not.
Yeah, there are channels devoted to your work.
I said, no. I said, you're just saying that to make me feel better.
No.
Like, no, we're not. You influenced a bunch of other bands that now have their own album. And I said, get the F out of here. And they're like, no.
No, so seriously.
That's how hard my head is, that I didn't want to believe that it was actually true. Because if I started to believe it and I got back into music and I was wrong, I would be so devastated that I wouldn't be able to live.
Those 4 records are legacy. 30 plus years later, I am still jamming it every fucking day. All my viewers out there are listening to these songs every day. And, it might just be 1, it might be 2, it might be 5. You don't know.
I don't.
But those 4 records are just, I'm still waiting for a band to strike me the way those records struck me when I was coming through high school.
So, okay, how about this? What was your favorite song off of Danzig 1?
Not of This World.
Ha! Not of this world. I like when it goes to the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Lucifuge.
Oh man.
Ah!
Woo, there's so many. That whole fucking record is good.
I don't have time for this.
I mean, I was a huge blues fan. Always.
So I like this one.
Killer Wolf, I was going to say, is my favorite track.
Got a G-string problem here. String's getting ready to break, so. But.
That video alone was just like, you're standing outside this cabin like this. And I'm just like,
stupidest video ever.
I'm like, this dude is going to come through the screen and snap my neck. That's what's going to happen.
It was so hot that day.
I believe
California, it was 105 degrees out there. And we're standing around this cabin getting eaten by bugs and stuff. And it was just like, but
We're not gonna make it.
the How the Gods Kill video and Bodies, right?
Yep.
That was all shot at Charlie Chaplin's stage in A&M Records
Oh wow.
in Hollywood. And one of the models on that shoot that was I think she was in How the Gods Kill and Bodies, Shauna O'Brien, she went out with Charlie Sheen. She was a Penthouse pet and all that, blah, blah, blah. Well, we met on that set and just hit it off like buddies. She was sarcastic Irish. I'm Irish, German and a ball buster. And we're still friends on Facebook to this day.
Nice.
It was, and because we had fun together on that shoot, I'll never forget. I did the dumbest thing that any idiot dude could ever do. I broke the cardinal rule of rock videos. I asked one of the PA assistants to get a number for one of the models because she was so beautiful. I just had to talk to her. And it was just like, you don't do that. And I knew better, but she was so hot, I had to take shots. I got in trouble for it. It freaked her out. I creeped her out. The band,
shit. You guys were like bodybuilders back then.
I was like, hey, man, if she weren't so hot, but what am I going to do? I'm a guy. But anyway, so there was some funny stuff that happened back in the day. Okay, so wait a minute. So we played Blood and Tears. We played Her Black Wings. A lot of people like,
Devil's Plaything will always be a staple in my play history. Believe me. Yeah. And then It's Coming Down hit so hard that oh man, it was so hard and fast and strong.
Another heavy down chopper.
Yeah. I was like, you guys it felt like you were coming to a new level of heavy. And I mean, me and my friends would mosh pit to that song.
And the chorus, I'm on fire and I need a hole, right?
Yep. I used to tease my friends. I'm like, can you play that? Can you play that riff?
Right.
They're like, well, let me try. And a fucking hand falls off. I'm like, yep, that's what you should aspire to be. You need to be a John Christ.
A lot of people are like,
Dirty Black Summer. Sure, that was like the jam. It was more of a chillback tune too.
What's that?
It was more like a chillback tune too. You crack a couple of cold ones and play that tune and take it into the night.
The thing that always bothered me about it was now I like it, but at the time Glenn and I would like bang heads on it because the chorus. I never liked that end part.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to do something different. I was just outvoted, but now I'm like, all right, it's all right. But I'll never forget the engineer, Nick DiDio. His brother, Mark DiDio, was the VP at Deaf American. And Nick was friends with the Black Crowes. He was really good friends with Richie Sambora. you know, a Bon Jovi and all this kind of stuff. So he came out. He knew Brendan O'Brien, the guys from Atlanta, but he was from Pigtown in Philadelphia. Go figure, right? You know, but Nick and I hit it off. And, you know, during all those years, I was sober. I wasn't drinking nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just Diet Coke and iced tea. That was it. And Nick wasn't really a drinker either. But we hit it off. Great sense of humor. And I remember when we were in the studio trying to get every song, I wanted to have a different guitar tone for the solos.
Sure.
Different textures. And I'll never forget when we were listening back to Dirty Black Summer, I was like, man, it's so short and it's just so straight blues. Nobody's gonna like it. And he said, just do it. He said, let me play with the reverb and the tones and we'll see what we come up with. And then now I'm like, and now I'm like, yeah, okay, that was sweet, right? Short, in and out, nobody gets hurt.
Right. But it was perfect for the song. And, you know, for, you know, metal at that time, it was like everything was super fast riffing, you know, as far as like solos and stuff. But when you would do solos, people felt that shit 100 rows in the back, like really? Emotionally.
I mean, I that's what I was going for. I was trying to get myself into Glenn's head. Not
that's got to be very difficult.
Well, it wasn't to think what he was thinking.
Right.
It was just to be inside with him, feeling the emotion that he was expressing. Because you got to admit, man, when that guy would sing and wail and croon, it was just, I just remember saying, God, I wish I could do that.
Right.
I wish my voice sounded like that when he would scream. And just see, here's the thing about Glenn Danzig that a lot of people probably don't know. He was a pretty good drummer. Okay.
Oh yeah.
His sense of timing. He has a really, really good clock, and taught me a lot. Because when I came in, I was a good player. I was a great technician, but I didn't have a pocket yet.
Yeah.
He already had a clock. So I had to learn how to do that. And, you know, and the thing was, I was a freaking jazz snob when I came into it, working with the great late Hank Levy. And, you know, my head was full of musical vocabulary and keys and secondary dominants and symphonies and, you know, sonatas and all this shit, right? And and they didn't read a lick. They didn't know anything about any of that. So all this stuff I knew was useless, except for my ear. If I could interpret, because of my skill, hearing Glenn, he would record his voice into a micro cassette recorder and play it to me over the phone. And he would just be like, and from that, I would build a riff.
Yeah.
You know, I would bring songs of my own they never liked, and they were too metal. You know, I think the only one they really liked that a lot of parts got on the record was you know, it was like breaks and parts of songs where I could get that metal thing. That's why How the Gods Kill was like my record.
Yeah.
You know, Angie.
Yeah, Left Hand Black is like one of my all-time faves too.
Yeah. So that was the thing, you know, but I wasn't getting the feedback like you're giving me, like, man, those solos, the emotion, the feeling. Because I mean, Glenn and I completely disagreed on what solo should sound like on these songs.
I'm not surprised.
And Rick Rubin didn't really care as long as it was cool and it fit the song. He was like, for him, it's about the drums and the vocals. The rest, you know, he wasn't bothered. If the guitar was cool, that was enough, you know. And so I would work on my pocket and my timing. You know, Chuck would establish a groove and I would lay back behind it. So Chuck and I always were having these rhythm wars. He wanted to play faster, I wanted to play slower. So this tug of war created a pocket and Glenn's vocal sat right on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was never complete agreement on anything, but that created the intensity of it.
Right? Oh yeah.
And so, you know, I think about some of those songs, When the Dying Calls and Where and Anything was probably one of my favorite guitar solos. You know? That G string. You know, it's just like,
mm-hmm. It was
so
definitely your guitar riffing sound tone that drove that whole record.
Yeah, so that was the thing, you know, it warms my heart that after Erie and I left, the consensus amongst a lot of fans is the first four.
That's literally the core of all fans. We all say it. I'm 47 years old and still saying it. Believe me, all my viewers say the same thing. Hasn't been the same since. That was it. As a drummer, me personally, I have to be like this with the guitarist when building songs. It's like I know where that person's going and they know where I'm going, and we just like come together like that. So I'd give both my nuts away to just play with you for like an hour. You know what I mean?
You know what? Find some promoters, find some record stores, some music stores that are willing to pay for a clinic. The thing is, all you do is they say, okay, he's going to do autographs and he's going to play, right? He's going to sign autographs, take pictures, tell stories. He's going to demo songs from the first four records because according to John Christ, now I'm speaking in third person, right? John Christ was the original and only lead guitar player for Danzig.
Absolutely.
You know, the guys, Tommy Victor, they're great guys. They're awesome. Tommy saved his bacon. After I left, I know he had tours booked and all this, and he came in a hot spot and he got the job done. Josh Lazy was the bass tech. He jumped in on bass literally. And Joey Castillo, he was the new guy, so he didn't want to, you know, rock the boat, as it were. And he ended up making bazillions with Queens of the Stone Age, you know.
Right.
So, and all those guys are sober now.
Right.
You know, and I felt bad that I had to leave because I love Joey Castillo and I love Chuck Biscuits and you know, Lazy and the other guitar techs. We had some amazing crews and lighting crews. Our sound guy, you know, Rick Dittamo and Rick Deasy. I could go on forever, but we couldn't have done it without all those people, the crews, the record company, You know, there's a gal, Renee Palome, that was our handler, very first record. She went to college with Rick Rubin. She was
Mm,
like an assistant friend, helped them out. She, you know, and Russell Simmons and these other people. She followed him to LA. Her mom was great. She was like my aunt. You know, we
that's
go
awesome.
and have dinner. Her mom was from Poughkeepsie, you know, so we'd play this horrible club, the box seat, but we would eat dinner at her place and all this kind of stuff. And there's so many more. There's, you know, Melissa Dragons. There are a bunch of people that worked at the record company that worked their asses off for us, that did great stuff so that we could do this. And it took dozens and dozens of people and millions of dollars to make it all happen. And I only wish that I could remember everybody's name and thank them
Right.
personally, you know. And I'm hoping that just by getting out there and playing some of these old songs again, that enough fans will notice and those people will come out of the woodwork and say, I remember you, and we can reconnect. Because you just, so many years have gone by, you're like, what happened to this person? How did their life go? What did it? It's kind of like I was talking to a friend yesterday about ex-girlfriends and boyfriends and talking to him 40 years later. Do you still hate
Right.
them? That kind of thing, you know, or am I just like that narcissistic that you don't even remember who the heck I was? You know what I mean? But in our own minds, we're ethnocentric. We think the world revolves around it, right? Everybody's in my orbit. Uh, and, you know, I've put numerous kids through college on therapy, not just physical. I'm just saying quietly. So, you know, it still takes every day, you know, to work through some of this stuff. But the music is the magic, the universal thing that brings us all together, right?
Absolutely.
And the more time I can spend connected to it, it's fresh oxygen. So I keep saying, you know, the music is my oxygen, but the fans are my blood.
Absolutely. And, as I live and breathe today, I am still one of your biggest fans. Always will be. I
Well,
brought my kid up on your songs, and he is a fan to this day. He's just turned 21. And there's, a laundry list of folks out there that have grown up with your classic riffs and
yeah.
still love it every single day.
And you know, I'm just starting to let a little bit of that come in and begin to enjoy it, you know, because
You deserve it, brother.
well, it's not about well, some of it is it's validation that okay, I was hoping I was good. I was hoping that the mood was right, that they received it, that we gave them enough. Because you don't know when you're in the studio, you're guessing.
Right.
And you go with it because you're like, man, I really like it. And statistically speaking, statistical probability, if I really like it and I think it really grooves, then there got to be at least thousands of other people that might enjoy it, you know. And then because you think on a small scale, because any more than you're pushing hubris, you know, and that's to be the way I was raised, you know, that's to be avoided at all costs. But now I'm replacing that just with confidence now. This year, I've been doing it for 50 years now.
Isn't
Half,
that
half a century. I wasn't playing guitar 50 years ago, but I was singing and dancing on stages, performing, and guitar came later. But I've got 50 in, half a century in. And now I know that what I know, I actually know it. And where I've been and what I've done um, is significant. And the fact that I'm reconnecting with fans from all over the world, some of them which I met for 2 hours one evening. I mean, who gets that?
it's really interesting. I'll tell you a special story. Hopefully it sticks with you. But
And then I
you know,
gotta go.
I was a fan, from the first record, obviously. So parents said, nope, can't go to the show. Nope, that's just not good for you. Nope, not good for you. So finally, by the time I get ready to graduate in 1994,
Yeah.
and you guys came to the Akron, Ohio Rhodes Arena with Marilyn Manson and Korn,
Corn.
who no one heard of before.
That's right.
And I finally got to see you guys live.
Akron.
And Akron, Ohio. Yep. I will never forget it. It's a memory that has never left me, even through all my bullshit over the years and everything I've been through. I'll always remember that as one of the single most greatest performances I have ever seen on that Danzig 4 tour.
Now, okay, so it was Danzig 4. So that
Yep.
was like, hang on a second. I'm trying at the beginning of the show.
You opened up with Brand New God. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. Favorite part of the whole thing, right?
Yep.
There. There. Ah, wait a minute.
Yep, that breakdown riff, man. Legendary.
Yeah, crazy, right? And then, of course, for me, oh, hang on. Okay, so
Going down to die. Who could forget that piece of blues metal mastery? It's so funny. I used to listen to that song. Like if I knew I got in trouble, I would listen to that song before I go to receive my punishment. It's like,
Right.
I'm taking my last walk, man.
Yeah, yep. So yeah, yeah.
Brad, thank you from Canada. Says Canadian here, lifelong fan.
Nice. Thank you.
Oh man, just everyone has been so amazing out in the comment section. Just, I mean, I've tried to put up as many as I could because I'm getting lost in just soaking it all in myself. Because 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago, never would have thought I'd be sitting here with this legend right here. Yep, let's show it off, man. Let's
So
see.
this is a friend of mine. His name is Tom Bolton. Like I call him Tom Michael Bolton.
Right.
Just as an insult. He goes, my brother's name is Michael. But so
Yes,
anyway,
sir.
he has a vinyl record store right down the street, named American Hemp Records, but he's also a pharmacist. So the story about him is when my sister-in-law was sick, she was dying of cancer, and there was no treatment for the type of cancer that she had. So she was in all these studies, right?
Yeah.
So they got her into like 2 or 3 of these experimental programs with these new drugs, and and the side effects were horrendous. And I was trying to get her some relief. And, we've been talking about CBD and THC and all this. And she didn't want to smoke anything. She was such a pure person,
Right.
the most special person on the planet Earth, especially to my wife. But anyway, I was in the pharmacy one day and I asked him, I said, what is up with this hemp? I said, I know they have medical marijuana for cancer and all that. I said, do you deal with that? And he goes, no. He says, he goes, I'm not treating for cancer. I'm treating for symptoms. I'm treating for pain. I'm treating for people who are trying to sleep, that have trouble sleeping. But so we have oils. We do have stuff that you can smoke. And he said, and pills. Some of it has THC, some of it doesn't. Some people don't respond. Some people have bad reactions to THC.
Oh,
Other
yeah.
people, just the oil alone. And when you smoke it, the chemicals go right into your bloodstream through the lung walls, right through the linings. When you eat
Mhm.
it, it goes through your digestive tract and it has to go across the intestine walls, which changes the chemical makeup. So it functions differently. Okay. And then there are hybrids of all this. And I'm like, that sounds crazy. And he plays guitar. That's how we hooked up. Right.
Nice.
Because he said, you look like a guitar player. And I was like, well, once way back. Anyway, uh, so I was desperate. I said, do you have anything that might help her with her nausea and help her sleep? And so he gave me a bunch of free samples and everything. And it took me weeks to convince her, but maybe a month or more. She was living here for a while and she finally started taking them. And it was the only thing that got her any relief. Right.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so this guy can do no wrong in my book now. And he's a guitar player and he sells records and vinyl and CBD oil and pre-roll blunts and all this kind of stuff. I don't know. I tried some, it's too strong for me, man. I'm just not a good pothead. I,
You
you
gave
know,
it an honest effort.
well, you know what? When I almost flunked out of high school back in the 80s, because I was hanging out with older people and they could tolerate it. And
Yeah.
it just made me want to chill and just entertain myself in the classroom, but I couldn't get motivated, couldn't do anything. And now the new stuff is so strong that they have the edibles and the gummies and all this. So
Yeah.
for me, sometimes it's great because the idea for me is they say there are two different kinds, right? Indica and something else. One is like AC/DC and one is Pink Floyd.
Right.
So
Brad
one of
says, I'll teach you tolerance.
yeah. So I made the mistake of listening to one of my students who'd been doing smoking, chewing, all this stuff for years.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
he said, here, try some of this. You'll be fine. Just have a little bit. You'll be fine. And I had just gotten a new iPhone. And for some reason, I decided to try some of it. An hour later, I'm lying flat on my back on my kitchen floor. I can't remember any of my passwords. I couldn't even spell my own name. And I'm going,
Oh,
people
no.
pay for this? People pay for this, really?
That's how I feel after tequila, which is why I don't drink it.
Yeah. So this guy, his is different. His is mild, but he can compound for different situations like he did
Mm.
for my sister-in-law. So, and there are a lot of uses, arthritis, skin conditions, and it's just like, it's been around for 10,000 years.
Right.
And he's got a great, cool vinyl store. I'm probably going to give some lessons in the back of the store there. It's a 150-year-old building, and I'm like, yeah, man, let's have fun, let's jam and all this kind of stuff. And honestly, if I wear this T-shirt on camera, he gives me cash. So hey,
You
Tom,
saw
here
it
it is.
here, people. You saw it out there in Morgrot Entertainment Land.
That's right.
Right
So
there. He's wearing the shirt. Make sure this man gets paid.
send me a link with the timestamp where we start talking about that. I'll just send him that bit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
be covered. But listen, thanks for having me on and your fans. I hope to meet each and every one of you at some point. Talk to anybody about what I'm doing. Like I said, the cameo is a lot of fun.
JohnChrist.com at the bottom there. You guys have been seeing it this whole time.
The John Christ on Instagram. I do a limited amount of online lessons. I'm still a music professor at a local college. That's like my charity work,
Hell yeah.
I'm trying to corrupt the minds, the youth of America. And
I'm a retired teacher.
So. I teach a class called The History of Rock and Roll. Nice. And I start the semester playing this.
Hell yeah.
So anyway, let's get some more Danzig, John Christ music. And what I want to do is I want to go out kind of like Chuck Berry, travel around with a guitar and an amp, go to cities, because I know they're great players, great singers, drummers, bass players, guitarists in every town. They just want to be asked to play. And if I said, listen, I'm coming out in 2 weeks, learn these 10, 12 songs. You don't have to be perfect. Just don't freaking embarrass me.
I'm telling you right now, if you come through Omaha, Nebraska, I'm your man.
Well, you know what? Start talking to the promoters, because when I come in, I come in hot. I'm just saying, I'm ready.
I'm ready as well.
But the other thing is, do your best. Just show up. If it ain't right, I'll crucifix it.
There we go.
Right? My thing is,
I'll take my lashes.
There you go. I come in and I like to play with people and then figure out where we are, do a little sound check, jam session, play blues, play anything you want. And then when the crowd shows up and the lights go down, I flip the switch.
We will make that happen. Thank you so much, John Christ, for all of the classics, your body of work, and the work that you continue to do. Everybody out there, request this man for your town, and follow him and continue to show him just what he has given us in the metal world. So as you are about to lay it down, or actually, no, it's middle of the afternoon. So if you're getting ready to go party, jam those first fucking records. And just remember that this man right here is the reason that you have him. And always stay heavy.